5 seconds. You're live.
All right. Okay, good evening, everyone. Excuse me, and welcome to the Thursday, March 20th, 2025, 6 p.m. edition of the Auburn Zoning Board of Appeals. My name is Robert Tatro. I am the chair, and I'm calling this meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals, and thank you all for attending. Please note this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Is there anyone here in the audience recording tonight? Hearing none, seeing none, thank you. Also, if you have any electronic devices, if you could turn them down to a silent or vibrate mode, we'd appreciate it, please. So just to make sure the meeting runs smoothly, efficiently, and respectfully, only one person may speak at a time, and each speaker must be recognized by the chair before proceeding. We'll also adhere to our established agenda. In the interest of time, we'll limit each speaker's comments to 3 minutes. Please be concise and avoid any repetition of points already made by others. If a point has been covered, we kindly ask that you refrain from repeating it to ensure that we allow everyone a chance to contribute. So with that being said, I have my first action as chair to institute an executive session. So I'm going to read this first. I have an executive session motion. A motion would be in order to go into executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to deliberate upon matters which, if done in an open meeting, could detrimentally affect the position of the town regarding strategy with respect to litigation, to come out of executive session and reconvene in an open meeting. Following the second to the motion, roll call vote is required, so I'll be doing that shortly. So let me allow just to read this again. Executive session at 6 p.m. in accordance with MGL Chapter 38, Section 21A3, deliberate upon matters which, if done in an open meeting, could detrimentally affect the position of the town regarding strategy with respect to litigation. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Mr. Chairman, a motion as stated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we're going to do a roll call. Vice Chair Maron?
Approve.
Mr. Cussy? Approve. Mr. Garabedian? Approve. And I vote to approve. So we are into executive session for the time being. We'll be exiting the room, and we will return and convene when it is completed. Okay. So just to make it official, I have to have another motion to come out of executive session now that we've completed it. Do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
Mr. Chairman, motion to come out.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Vice Chair Maron?
I approve.
Mr. Cussy? Mr. Garabedian? Approve. And I vote to approve. Our executive session has officially ended. So we're going to move on to our applicant. Again, this hearing is remained open since, so there is no reason to read through, but I will quickly, just to refresh our memories. Applicant 16 Perry Place LLC requesting a comprehensive permit under Mass General Law 40B for a housing complex at 16 Perry Place, Auburn, Mass, map 18, parcel 14 and 15, and this is continued from 2/20/25. So what we have this evening is a resubmitted list of waivers that we'll go over. Is the applicant, hi.
Yes.
Hi, sir, how are you?
Hey, good, how are you?
Good. I would like to yield the floor to you right away, and we can kind of get busy onto what you're going to accomplish this evening. So I yield the floor to you, sir. Go ahead.
In all honesty, I think you were pretty much going to touch base with it anyway. We resubmitted a new list of waivers. I do have multiple copies. I'm not sure if everybody has a copy, needs a copy on the board. Neighbors? Anybody? You guys think?
Thank you.
I'll take one.
We have ours, thank you very much. I appreciate that. So before we continue, I just have one administrative requirement that I have to take care of. So our time limit with you technically expires, I believe it's April 10th. Is that correct? Can I make sure?
I think you, I actually do
Okay,
think
I
you
believe
are.
it's April 10th, but what I would like to just be able to request, if you would be willing to make sure, so this is, in case this is continued, which I'm anticipating it would be, March, I just want to make sure, April. So the meeting technically would be the 17th, although we would expire on the 10th. Would the 17th be
Yeah, that's fine.
agreeable to you?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine, yeah.
So
And,
just for the record, the applicant has agreed that would be acceptable for an April 17th meeting. In the event, would continue to that point. So thank you very
I
much,
know
I
in
appreciate it.
in other cases, they would send us just something to sign saying that we're
Oh,
agreeing to
okay.
do that. That's what I did in other cases. If you want that, you can email it to me, I'll sign it, send it back, or I can stop in if you want me to sign it in front of you. Either one.
If we need to, I'll get you something.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you so much, I appreciate that. So,
Mr. Chairman, while you're on that topic, because maybe we can just check this box, so are we no longer going to be entertaining moving or having another meeting on April 3rd?
I would say, so that would probably be accurate, but I think let's leave it for new business, just in case, because if something comes up this evening that might change that, but I would agree with that statement, yes.
That's if the applicant's willing to wait until the next scheduled meeting. Okay, thank you.
So, to you, sir.
We have an updated, just a layout plan. We didn't do the full set. I don't know if I have some 11 by 17s, if the board would like some copies, or the
I think we have
neighbors.
pretty good adequate copies
They
here, if
have them.
anybody else
Does
doesn't
any of the
have any.
neighbors want a copy? I have. So
You want to sit up here? Can you? Please, please feel free.
I have a packet, actually. It has most of the information if she wants one.
Yeah, whatever you like, sure. You're more than welcome to come up here, you can sit over there, you can spread out, whatever you like. Okay, come on up. We're going to bring our consultant up.
Very much.
Thank you. When you get settled, could you just introduce yourself on the microphone?
Yes, sir.
No
I will.
rush, just when you get yourself settled.
I will, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Judy Barrett, Barrett Planning Group. I'm here as a Massachusetts Housing Partnership Consultant to the board.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, sir, go ahead.
So The latest layout plan, really the only change that we did is we pulled the garages to be 7 feet off the property line. That's what the zoning is, so we no longer are requesting that waiver that was denied at your last meeting anyway. But that's why it doesn't show up on our waiver list. The sewer department, there was also a waiver on that, was denied. We just removed it because, oh no, I think we were going to talk to the sewer department. We just removed it because in the bylaw, it says, to do the 2% pitch, if you cannot, go see the superintendent. So basically, all we were asking for is what it really just said in the bylaw anyway. So I just removed that anyway, because just kind of is what it is. So that was removed. The other one that was put back in was the wetlands. We asked for the buffer for 50 feet. We actually cited the wrong one. The requirement isn't 50 feet, it's 25 feet. So we're asking for, from relief from that, from grading and whatnot. There is no structure or anything within that area, so we don't believe we'll have an issue. But again, through Judy, but we would also be filing with conservation for that approval. So we're not necessarily asking the board to approve that, but I think, through the bylaws, that's what we would have to.
Okay. And then the other standard ones here, I see you have, so it was the driveway, multifamily dwelling height.
Yep. And I verified all the, the height requirement too. It's the way that the Auburn bylaw is, it actually is to the top of the ceiling of the top floor,
Right.
not to the ridge. So we did verify that, and that was accurate.
Okay, that's good to know, thank
Yep.
you. Do you want to address, you want to address the ones we've talked about so far? Do you want to continue through the list and listen to the rest of the changes? Or do you want to address the front page first?
Mr. Chairman, if you're openly, I would hear from the applicant on what the changes are.
Okay, then we'll
That-
continue, go ahead.
Yeah, what I just said is really that's all the changes were.
Right, that's what I thought, that's why I
Yeah,
was
there was no
wondering, that's
other,
pretty much
no
what
other
we got.
changes. I think the substance ones, we didn't go through. You guys wanted to, talk about it some more and talk possibly with Judy too, were the big ones, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, I just want to make sure, I'm only speaking on this particular one, but the 3.9.1.1, the first one, waiver to allow accessory garages for 10 vehicles, the issue with that was that we didn't agree with this, the board didn't agree with the setback. So they've corrected it and they brought it to the 7-foot
Yeah.
setback for the garage.
I believe that one was approved at the last meeting.
Right.
It was, like you just said, it was the setback that they didn't want it close. They're okay with the 10
So I just want to be
garages.
clear on that one, that was because of the setback.
Yes.
Yep,
The
Mr.
setback has been corrected on the plan. I just didn't, full disclosure.
Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, the first two on the list here, if I'm correct, the first one we approved by 3-2, and the second one we approved by 5-0, the driveway one.
Okay. See, that's good to know. So you're saying that the waiver to allow the accessory garage at 10 feet?
We approved that by a vote of 3-2 last meeting.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, so
And
that
then
one's all set then.
The second one we approved by a vote of 5-0 last meeting.
Okay, so that one's all set too then. Right?
Yes.
We agree with those?
6711 we approved?
6711, yes.
Yes.
That is a difference, by the way, just to be clear, the 6711 design requirement parking facility, each lot may have one access driveway which shall be at least 24 feet wide at its narrowest point, but not more than 36 feet wide at its widest point, and they're waiving to allow access driveway of 54 feet in width. So it's basically a 6-foot difference.
And that, to the chair, that's per fire department request.
And that is per fire department request?
Yes.
Okay. Correct. And that was because of the setback issue.
Yeah, there were two waivers for the garages last time. The amount of garages and then the setback. We denied the setback waiver, but we approved the amount of garage waiver.
Right.
Okay.
3911, I have in my notes, Mr. Chairman, that we actually denied that waiver.
You have it as a denial. Well, I mean, if we need to clarify it with a fresh vote, I have no problem with that either way, just until there's no issues. So let's do, I think we should do that then, just to be clear. Section 3.9.1.1, accessory uses permitted in the residential districts and dwellings in the non-residential districts. Private garage or carport for not more than 1 to 4 not more than 4 motor vehicles, solar system, greenhouse, tool shed or barn, swimming pool, tennis court, provided that such recreational facilities are used only by the residents and their guests, and this is for specifically for a waiver to allow accessory garages for 10 vehicles. Do I have a motion on 3.9.1.1 waiver?
I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, let's just do a roll call vote on that. Vice Chair Maron? Mr. Cussy? Mr. Garabedian? Approve. And I vote to approve.
Thank you.
So the waiver to allow the accessory garages for 10 is established?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
You may.
And you may already have covered this, and I've just laxed, but is, with the number of board members that we have this evening, is it true that any vote will require a supermajority?
To you, sir,
So
we
the chair,
discussed this earlier.
for a
but if you wanna just-
40B, you only need a majority, so you need 3 votes. For a 40B, you only need a simple majority, so you would need 3 votes.
Right, we only need a simple majority for these particular action items. We don't require a supermajority for this.
Right.
We require a simple.
Simple majority.
Right.
Your 40B.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that one's all set. So the 64, so again, 6.7.1.1, design requirements for parking facilities. Each lot may have one access driveway which shall be at least 24 feet wide at its narrowest point, but not more than 36 feet wide at its widest point. And the waiver to allow access driveway of 54 feet in width, which is a deficit of 6 feet, and this is per fire department request. So do I have a motion on the 6.7.1.1?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Yep. Second.
Okay, Vice Chair Maron?
Approve.
Mr. Cussy? Approve. Mr. Garabedian?
Approve.
And I vote to approve. Okay, approve. Now, this is where we have 9.3.6.1, a multifamily dwellings in the RA district, maximum dwelling height of 35 feet, the waiver to allow a multifamily dwelling height of 45 feet. Do you want to just clarify that one again for the board, please, sir, before I move it over?
So the height of a building is measured from it's really the top of the ceiling of the top floor, not of the ridge. So that's 45 feet, that's how the bylaws are dictated.
Okay, and just for the town side, can you verify?
Absolutely. That's what our bylaws say.
Okay,
Just the exact, that's the measuring point from the average elevation of the center line of the front of the dwelling.
okay. And I do believe that we just had brief discussion in the past that our bylaw, in this case, that particular measurement is unique to many other towns in the area, is that correct?
Yes.
And would it be the town's recommendation that that be looked at and changed in any way, or updated?
I believe it's coming up at town meeting.
It is? Oh, good, okay, so that issue is coming up at a town meeting
Adam has already
in May.
put something together for that.
Excellent. Okay, so no, that's good to know, because if we have something that's significantly different from others, then we should have that compared and corrected. So,
Does this meet the requirement?
10 feet.
No, they're seeking relief for 10 feet.
right, they're looking for 10 feet, and it's, a lot of it has, not a lot, I shouldn't say a lot of it, there is a significant amount of it that has to do with the wording of our bylaw. And that's why I was trying to point out, we have an unusually written bylaw in that particular subject matter that is not consistent with other towns in the area. So that's why they were saying it's going to be possibly adjusted at town meeting, depending on how they vote on it. So 9.3.6.1, multifamily dwellings in the RA district, maximum dwelling height of 35 feet, a waiver to allow a multifamily dwelling height of 45 feet. Just want to speak to the consultant for a minute, ma'am. Do you have any comments on this particular item? Or is it appropriate for me to even ask that? Let me ask that first.
Ask whatever you need to ask, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I think it would be hard to do the project that the applicants proposed at the height that would conform to your zoning bylaw. So I think the board has to, this is one of these classic cases of weighing the local concern against the regional need for housing. Because if you deny that waiver, you're probably having a significant impact on the project's feasibility.
Okay. And I see that we have a butter that would like to speak. Are there any other butters that would like to speak on this matter tonight? Okay. So I'll go ahead and give the butters their opportunity, please.
Danny Lodges, 39 Prairie Place. I don't understand what the consultant just said. It's going to be difficult? This is the only project in town and we have a major 335 40B units going in off of Route 20. Those are 3 stories. So what you're saying is the whole neighborhood and the town, everybody has to suffer because this gentleman it's not going to be financially fit for him? Is that what I'm understanding?
I'm saying, sir, that the board would need to determine that the project is feasible at a height that would conform with your zoning bylaw. And if it's not, then the board will have the burden of proof in an appeal that they didn't make the project infeasible. That's what I'm saying.
So what is feasible? What is considered feasible?
What is considered feasible is what their financial agreements are with the state, and that's not really, unfortunately, part of our purview on this. So when they go to the state and they say, we can do this project for X amount of dollars, it requires X amount of square footage, X amount of apartments, et cetera, and they figure it out based on that size lot, how high they have to go, what they have to do, and then that conversation takes place with the state. The only thing we are here to discuss of the difference between a 35-foot roof and a 45-foot roof. So again, this is because we're limited to what the 40B conversations that we can actually have.
One point, Mr. Chair, no, it's not a roof. It's a 66-foot high building that I'm going to be looking at out my living room window that's going to be blocking the sun, and that's going to be affecting. And I am not going to sit there and have somebody complaining because there is cow manure smell coming and saying, well, geez, we got to get rid of a farm or...
So I understand that, but you're projecting from a 35-foot to a 45-foot, somehow we've transmitted to cow poop.
Well, I'm just saying that the size of the building
Does
is...
not reflect the difference in cow poop, though.
It's ridiculous.
Correct.
And also, Mr. Chair, just so you know, you took the garages. He has 28 of them, not 10 on the...
Right, the garage structure itself would be able to support 10 cars each.
Oh, so there's...
There are multiple garages on property and site, but each garage will hold 10 cars roughly.
Okay. All right, thank you for clearing that.
I understand.
Thank you, thank you.
So, but again, we understand the complaints of this with the height and all those things, but again, our mission here is to balance out the needs of the community and the needs of the project. It's just realistically where we are, what we have to do, am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to be clear, the board can deny this waiver, and it really throws it back to the applicant to either come back with a plan that conforms with your height limit or to appeal the board's decision. That's how this is going to turn out.
Right.
They're going to change the design or they're going to appeal. So I'm not saying this is nice, and I'm saying I like it. I'm saying, trying to explain to the board what the legal balancing test is. And it would be really helpful if everybody heard the whole explanation instead of just pieces. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, I believe our problem is obviously we're not a safe harbor, so the regional needs outweigh the local concerns.
Right, and I agree with you on that too. Again, the safe harbor goal of 10% is really the anchor point. Again, you have to understand whether I like this law or anybody else likes this law, we have to work with the rules and the words that we have here. Changing it is not going to have any relative bearing on the outcome of these hearings right now. Right, so, yes, sir, how are you?
Yep, Steve Chambers, 61 Bancroft Street. I think part of that point was it's not just 10 feet that they're asking for because it will end up being 66 at the peak. Has anyone asked what the pro forma would look like if they reduced one or two of those buildings down to a 3-story? And again, just looking at the layout, there are 2 larger buildings set back a little bit further, but I don't know if any shadow casting has been done, or again, the feasibility. We say it's not going to be feasible. We don't know that. We haven't seen that information. I don't know if it's been asked. Obviously, there's a profit to be made, and we don't know what that threshold is, but has it been asked, can they lower it 1 story and still be economically viable?
I see you shaking your head and acknowledging a lot of this, so I'm going to
So
defer to you.
the board hasn't made a determination, as far as I know, what's feasible. What I'm saying is, if the board chooses to deny this waiver, you've got an option. You know, either you maybe approve the rest of it and you don't approve that waiver, and the applicant has to decide, am I going to go through a couple of years of appeal with the Housing Appeals Committee, or am I going to change my building design? That's all I'm saying. It becomes a feasibility argument between an applicant and a board, and the board has to decide, you know, whether the waiver of the height limit is something that makes the project fundamentally infeasible. And if the board isn't convinced that that's the case, they can deny the waiver and throw it back to the applicant.
Through the chair, my question was, we don't really know what feasible is. And I'm not looking to throw it back to drag this out any longer. I'm just saying, as the developer must know where his threshold is and how many units he needs to make this viable. And if you can eliminate a story on 2 of those buildings, what are they, 18 per floor? 16 per floor. So if you can reduce 16 or 32 units on there, does that make it not feasible for the developer? And again, I don't think it's on the board to say it's not economically feasible. They don't know the economics of it. So it makes it challenging. And I believe in this plan, you already have 1 3-story building, correct? And that's, again, I don't know where that is, but to be economically feasible, again, I don't know if you guys have that information, so it's silly to say that you have the information to make this, but you're not asking for you're asking for a 10-foot variance on our current bylaws, but essentially it's going to end up being almost 30 feet higher than what was anticipated by that flaw in our bylaw. So, thank you.
So I think to the applicant then, if you could answer that person's questions?
So I guess as far as the feasibility of these, they're extremely tight as they are. And I know that, you know, it's hard to believe, and with the interest rates that we have, the construction costs and everything, obviously the only way that we can get the cost down is through density. The other thing, the benefits with the 4-story buildings is that's when we can actually go to an elevator. The elevators are obviously better for seniors, kind of a better, seniors, people with disabilities, you know, they kind of attract more of those. When you go to that size of a footprint, obviously going up to the 4th floor to get the elevator, it is very beneficial of what, performer-wise, with the 4 stories is, again, it's elevator, it's obviously going up is always cheaper than going out. We do, like you said, we do have a 3-story building. It's a much smaller building, and that building will not have an elevator. Those will be stairs, which I think he referenced is another project in town. Really, all of their stuff is actually open air hallways, and it's stairs again. So this one with the elevators, we do typically see a lot more of the senior and disability, you know, clientele or customers.
So I just have a question. You brought something up about design, and you said that the other project, not the one you're proposing, has open air hallways. So they have some type of double door system or whatever it is at the end of each hallway. It opens up, it allows just airflow through. And versus if you have, what you're suggesting is that if you have a building with the elevator proposals, are they generally more airtight? Is that the reason why?
Yeah,
or?
both of our buildings, the buildings that we build, we don't do the open air hallways. That's more of a Florida thing. I was kind of surprised to see that. It's, you know, obviously with the climate here. So we do everything that we do, even our smaller building is all within the structure. But these, obviously the 4-story buildings will have the elevators and everything is within the structure. There's nothing open.
I think I want to defer to you.
I can comment a little bit on that. A number of those are 4-story buildings, and the way they get away with that is because bylaws say it's measured from the average height in the front of the building, and they have a drive around to the lower section, which has accessibility all by itself, and the only way to achieve that without the elevators is to have open air hallway between. Okay, so it's a real piece of the code here and a piece of the code there, and somebody really doing some homework to be able to sneak that in. The first thing I looked at is this is 4 stories, and where's the elevator? And now suddenly you read the commentary, you go, how did they pull this off? I go, yep, there you go.
Because they varied the height from one side of the building to the other.
And the front is right, and it's like a walkout in the back.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
That's,
I didn't know
another
that.
thing that we learned.
And that's the reason for the open air hallways?
Exactly. That's part.
Because I've never seen that around. I drove through that project. I couldn't believe that. You're like, what? That's a Florida thing.
You go through
Sorry,
it,
we're off
you
on a
go through
rant.
the book.
Sorry, I don't mean to, yeah.
No, it's, and that's just, again, this is all discovery as far as I'm concerned, so.
Yeah,
So
I
you're
didn't-
saying without the height, what you're saying is without the height, this project is not feasible?
Correct.
Does the board want evidence of that?
Yes, if it would be appropriate, we would love
I
evidence
think
of that.
that's what that's burdens on the
like
applicant.
a
If
pro-
the board denies this waiver, what's the economic impact on the project? The board has a right to make that decision, and the applicant, it's burden to prove that you're making the project uneconomic, and you can do that. And you can have the applicant's submission peer reviewed if you want. I'm not trying to drag this out, but I'm just trying to be honest with everybody. There is a process for doing this. And, the fact that the applicant has a particular building that his company builds doesn't mean that there isn't some other way to address the problem. So I'm not an architect, I'm not going to comment, I'm just saying it's up to the board. You have you have a right to ask for a waiver, they have a right to either approve or deny.
Okay. Yes, sir?
Chair, if I may ask, again, I know we're in New England, it's a sloped roof. Is there potential to lower that slope of that roof or make it, again, he's asking for a 10-foot variance, but we know it's going to be larger. If it is not economically feasible, is there a way to minimize the impact to the residents by lowering the roof or a flat roof or some sort, so the variance is more aligned with the 10-foot request rather than a 30-foot actuality? So I don't know if that's something that the developer could also look at.
So what I'm hearing here is they have a mansard roof. Have you heard of that? A mansard roof?
Explain it to me. I'm sure I have, but what is,
Units are, the third floor units are kind of in the roof. So
Oh,
a
like a
mansard
gambrel.
unit
Yeah,
helps
okay.
to bring the overall horizon of a building down.
Oh, sure, so I've seen
like,
those.
almost like a gambrel kind of
Right.
style?
A mansard, it's a mansard.
I've never heard of
Mine is
mansard.
built into the top row?
Yeah, so, I mean, that would be possibly, I'm not designing your project, I'm just saying to the board, if you're really uncomfortable about the height waiver, the applicant has options to consider to get the number of units he's proposing, or close to them, by changing the building design. It has been done in other communities. It's up to it really depends on how much you want to push back.
So what I'd like to do is just bring this over to the board then and have some comments from the other board members here. Vice Chair Maron, to you, sir, given this information?
On this particular waiver, Mr. Chairman, it's been suggested at previous meetings. I think this is one that we leave until the end with a full board, because irrespective of asking for modifications or a different roof design, the applicant is not going to reduce the number of floors. He's not going to reduce the number of apartments. And so this, in plain speak, this particular waiver, if we're denied, will send this into litigation, in my view. And so I think we need to consider that and put this in reserve. My suggestion would be to take lower hanging fruit and wait for the full board's complement until we're ready to move on the entire project with this waiver.
Okay. So in the meantime, should we propose, well, Mr. Cussy, your thoughts, sir? Let me do that first.
I would, I'd vote on it tonight. My feeling is it's too tall. From day one, it's been too tall for me, so. 4 floors is just too much. Just too many apartments, and the safety issue of the whole project haunts me, so. Yeah, I'd be willing to vote on it, and
Okay.
that's,
Thank you.
I don't like the 4 stories.
My only comment, Mr. Chairman, is I would just reiterate that our bylaw says, according to our bylaw right now, it is 45 feet. I don't think we can look beyond that 45 feet. Even though it is a 65-foot building, we have to follow our bylaw. We wouldn't be looking beyond it if it weren't a 40B, so we have to follow it as if it were a 45-foot building.
I appreciate that input, thank you. I do see we have a couple of abutters. Well, Mr. Chambers first, then I'll let you go in, sir.
I just want a point of clarification. It's 35 feet in the zone, correct? Yeah.
In the zone, yeah.
Yeah, okay, I heard you say 45, that's why I just,
Sorry, 45 is what they're proposing to go up to.
correct,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Just wanted
so
to clarify.
we can't look beyond it and say they're actually proposing to go up to a 66-foot building. They're only proposing a 45-foot building, is what I was saying.
Through the chair, again, if knowing height is a concern, if the developer would look at that, reducing that overall height, that, again, he hasn't shown a reduction in units, but you would be getting more in line with that because the waiver, it would put it back down. So I understand the legal aspects of that, but again, a request to make it, and I don't know the terminology, but to lower the roof line overall and have those units have that nice feature would be something I think the board could, again, when they're ready to take action, look into. So thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Dean Hazis, 11 Pearl Street. I just want to point out, I'm sure it's obvious to everybody, but the bylaws are the bylaws, and you have a right to just stick to them.
Correct.
I understand that waivers could be made, but when you look at these waivers, they're just so over the top. This one, it goes from 12 units, they want, where was it, 64. You know, I could see 12 to 20, right, 24, or 64, like, you have the tools right here to say no. Let them appeal it, let them fight it, please. It's too big. I agree, the safety issue, this thing, when I saw this today, I couldn't believe how big it is. And it's literally in their backyard. I'm down the street. And, you know, according to the lawyer, my lawyer, and I own a piece of that road, 16 feet of it, from one side to the other. I'm not letting anyone get through it. So just letting you know.
I understand that. No, and you know, one of the things, I know that we weren't really prepared to speak of that tonight, and I'm not really prepared to have a full conversation on that tonight, but the issue with the road ownership has not been resolved yet regardless.
understand.
So I do understand that as a very much an open situation.
And I just
So
wanna-
what we're trying to do is actually get through this stack
Right.
before we get to that part, tell you the
Okay.
truth, you know?
And just when I see the laws are here, if we just stick to them a little bit, they can't possibly, you know, they didn't do their due diligence to see what the laws were in building in Auburn, and they just decided to buy a piece of land and spend money and do all this architecture stuff and put how many years into this, 3 or 4 years, and not know, or know and think they're just gonna muscle through with the 40B thing. And the last point I want to make, I want to thank you guys all for your time, and I appreciate it, you know, and everybody here. Fuck, I forgot what I was going to say. Man, that's bad.
That's okay. We
All
do it
right.
all the time. You can come back up, because I
All
forget
right.
when I walk into a room what I'm doing, so.
Yeah, no, I just, it was important to. All right, it'll come back.
That's okay. You're welcome to come back. Any comments on that, ma'am? Would you like to?
No, sir, not at this time.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, so,
I remember.
Okay, that's okay.
The last time we were here, somebody had said, there's projects, you know, I know, you guys said something about 10%, I know there's a term for it, I don't know what it is. They said there's projects in the area that are gonna get us at 14-something%. This one is gonna increase or help 1.2%. So say no to this one, let the other ones go, we'll be well over our 10%, we'll be at 12-13%.
I wish that's how it worked.
I
would
do,
really-
too.
I really do. But it's
Thank you.
unfortunately, I can tell you that that's not how it works. Until there's actually warm bodies in those rooms, they won't count them. It used to be, you know, you had an occupancy permit, then they were counted. Now it's until they're actually occupied. They keep pushing the goalpost down the road.
I understand, thank you. And we'll go with the safety issues, we'll go with, you know, wait till conservation gets involved in this. I hope they have something to say, but, you know, please, use the tools that we have now.
Understood.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, one thing, if the buildings by Crystal Caves were online, we still would be below 10%. We'd be at like 9.6%.
9.4, I think
Yeah.
it is, right?
Yeah, so we'd be very close, but we're still below safe harbor, so just figured I'd say that.
Okay.
But there's no timeline where we have to meet the 10%, right? I mean, we don't-
Until we meet safe harbor,
No, there's not a timeline involved in it. It just, once you reach 10%, the options become wider for the town.
yeah, the local need outweighs the regional need once we've reached safe harbor. So right now, the regional need for housing presumptively outweighs whatever local concerns we have as a board. At 10% at safe harbor, it flips, and the local need presumptively outweighs the regional need for housing. So that's why we want to get to that 10%.
They have to be put in correct areas. This one is, this is asking for the room, really. I mean, I just don't,
So what I would propose then, if I may, and with the consultant's ear, we could sit on this one, we can wait for the next hearing, and in the meantime, if they can demonstrate that it's not a burden, or it is a burden, and see a possible separate plan, and that would satisfy both at the same time, I think, right? Would that be appropriate course of
Yeah,
action?
I think what the board is asking for is show us a plan that you might be able to get essentially the same number of units if that's what you need, but in a building that isn't so tall. So
Correct.
I think that's the question.
That is the question. And I think that would also possibly satisfy some of the abutters as well.
Okay.
So if we can
That's
work
fair.
on that one for the next one, then we can move on to the others. Is that agreeable?
It is, Mr. Chairman, but I want to bring us back to something Mr. Garabedian had said earlier. So recognizing that we're just looking at 10 feet. And you made the comment, sir, that you know, we're having this discussion because it's a 40B. But, you know, I'll go on record and suggest that if any applicant non-40B was in front of me, I wouldn't give them 10 feet on a building.
And I wasn't suggesting that. I was suggesting we can't look beyond, and I don't want to, I wasn't suggesting anything on the board's behalf, just we can't look beyond the 45 to 66 foot range. Yep, that was really
I
my,
completely understand. As much as we'd like to focus on how high that building is really going to be.
Yep, we can-
Understand how our bylaws are written. But, and that's why, and I suggest that, not to come after Mr. Garabedian, but to suggest that I'm in favor of waiting on this. Because if we were to take a vote this evening with respect to Mr. Cussy, I think that this puts our options, this limits our options in the way I would believe this would go tonight. And for that, I think we should move this to the bottom of the list, perhaps get some more information if that's useful. But I think when we come back to this, irrespective of what information comes back, we're still going to be faced with the same exact issue, whether or not we move this waiver forward or not.
Okay. So I think if we have the applicant come back with a possibility of a modified plan, or can demonstrate that it's a hardship, one of the two, right? That would be the course of action?
Well, it's not just a hardship, it's infeasible. And if the applicant's argument is it makes this project infeasible, the board can have that peer reviewed.
Okay.
But this is Chapter 40B, and profitability and feasibility are central to the act. So there is a burden on the board to be careful about imposing conditions that might make a project infeasible, because it will hurt your position in an appeal. So what I'm suggesting is throw it back to the applicant and say, you know, show us a modified design that might get you at or very close to the number of units you're proposing, but brings the height of the building down. That's all I'm saying.
Right. I think that's
some
reasonable.
conditions.
Is that agreeable? Okay, is that agreeable? Okay. So then I'm going to suggest that we take no action on 9.3.6.1, and that we request that the applicant bring back a feasibility modified plan and demonstrate that it is financially impossible, you know, impractical, or a modified plan that would demonstrate the number of units with a lower roof line.
Yep, that's fair.
Okay, thank you. So for the, we're gonna, I think we'll call it a postpone for now. Okay, on that one. So then we have 9.3.6.2, multifamily dwelling in the RA district. The lot contains no less than 10,000 square feet per dwelling on the Residence A, residential office, local business highway, or business districts. Waiver to allow 2,451 square feet per dwelling unit based on 372,625 square feet of land area and 152 dwelling units. Now, would that change based on the request for a modified plan with a shorter roof line? Before we move on, my questions.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Mr. Chairman, I think it's doubtful based on the dwelling square footage. So I think it's doubtful that any plan that would be modified, brought forward, would affect that.
Okay.
To answer your question directly.
since it's not total volume, it's just the square footage of the floor plan.
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
It's not the volume of the building, it's the square footage of the floor plan.
Right.
So we would probably change the volume by decreasing the height, but not the floor
Not
plan.
necessarily the
Right.
density, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're clear when I make these decisions, or if we proceed forward with them, that, so,
The boxes are still going to be the same. It's
Right.
just that he's talking about the cap, we're talking about the height of the cap.
so, I mean, I don't really see an issue with that. A 2,451 square foot for a dwelling unit is an average. And you're going to have, how many, what are the bedrooms? You're going to have 2 and 3?
Ones, twos, and threes.
Ones, 2s, and 3s?
Correct.
So this is basically what you're looking for, is an average of 2,451, am I correct, or?
I believe so, yes.
Right, okay. Any thoughts on that?
No additional comments for me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'm good.
No, okay. So is there a motion on the multifamily dwelling RA? Lot contains 10,000 square feet per dwelling, residence A, resident office, local business highway, business districts. Waiver to allow 2,451 square feet per dwelling unit based on 372,625 square feet of land area and 152 dwelling units. Do I have a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Vice Chair Maron? Mr. Cussy?
I deny.
Okay. Mr. Garabedian?
Approve.
And I'll vote to approve, so we got a 3-1 on that.
Can I just point something out for the record?
You can.
The board is asking the applicant to come back with a modified design to reduce the height of the building, but has not cut the applicant's density. And I think it's
Correct.
important for people to understand that the applicant really is not in a position to come back and say, you've cut my density. The challenge is to redesign the building,
Right.
so that everybody gets it.
Thank you. That's a great point.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next one, 9.3.6.3, multifamily dwellings in the RA district. Only one multifamily dwelling per structure per lot is allowed. Waiver to allow 3 multifamily dwellings on the lot. I mean, I think that's pretty standard. I don't want to say standard, but if it's not accepted, the project's dead. Again, when I say project's dead, it does not mean it's dead from our point of view. It goes to the state after that. So I want to be clear on that as well. By saying that correctly? It's
Yes.
okay.
If the
Before I
applicant
get myself in trouble.
If the applicant chooses to appeal.
If
Yes.
the applicant chooses to appeal, okay. Yes, sir.
So I was just asking, at one time this was 2 lots, I just wanted to verify it has been confirmed that it is now 1 lot? Is that,
That would have to be, through the chair, that would have to be done to the registry of deeds. It doesn't come to us.
so we don't know if this is 1 lot?
No.
Again, at one time, this was multiple lots, so again, without having the record, just want to make sure if you're going to vote on a single lot and it's not a single lot, that's clarified, that it is a single lot.
Okay, so
you.
I would like to verify that that is done first before we make a motion on that. Would you agree? Okay, so my note for that 9.3.6.3 is going to be verify that the lot has been consolidated. Okay, so that one's on that. So we have 9.3.6.4, multifamily dwellings in the RA district. No single dwelling structure contains more than 12 apartment units or more than 8 attached houses in the RA or RB districts. Waiver to allow 64 apartment units in a single dwelling structure in the RA district.
Sorry.
One second, I just want to make sure. So go ahead, before we have the comments on this particular one, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Even in the applicant, he notes that the property access is on Walsh Ave. And according to the deed of that property, there is still no access to this road. So I think we're putting the wagon before the horse here by voting on these things. The deed is, access is Walsh Ave, water is Walsh Ave, sewer is Walsh Ave. And we're asking for waivers on two buildings that there's no access to that land. It's Walsh Ave. When 290 was put in, the land was split, and shame on the state, because the state did it. They never gave him access to that property. But yet we're asking for waivers. There is no, you can go back in the books we went in, it's 1900s. Everything is Walsh Ave. And the deed says, bingo, Walsh Ave. If somebody else bought it, other than a 40B, it would be, sorry, your access is to Walsh Ave. Well, you want to make a tunnel under 290? Knock yourself out. You want to put a bridge in over 290? Knock yourself out. There is so many discrepancies on the applicant going to the state, and I do have the part of the application with me tonight, sir, that there's no town water and town sewer down there. All right, and then one of the other things was, and I'm sure the building inspector can correct me if I'm wrong, if there was ever a fire, there's one hydrant. They would have to go all the way to Rockland Road to tap off of that, because the hydrant on Perry Place is not going to put out the magnitude of water that is going to be needed for a building that large. But I just wanted to get into, it's still 2 lots and access to one of them. And if that goes through, now you're putting an overburden on the road and the residents. And the consultant's shaking her head, yes. It's a major overburden. We're talking about a piece of property, it's not even connected to Perry Place. And again, I think we're putting the cart before the horse.
You may.
Mr. Lodges,
Yes, sir.
and time again, you've come before us with very thoughtful challenges to the things that we're discussing. So I want to just remind you and all, and myself, as you were speaking, the reason why we're here is because a state-level board or commission
Okay, yeah.
or body
There's 2 there, right there.
determined that this project, when it was applied for, was feasible. Now, that was their determination. I don't know what research or what credibility or what substantive evidence that they looked at to suggest that this was feasible in this place. However, all the things that you are suggesting are significant challenges would, in my view, and rightfully so, need to be separately litigated and challenged, but not through this board, respectfully. And so, all of those challenges, which, the applicant may well know that these are challenges that are forthcoming that he may have to overcome, but those are separate from the action that we can take, primarily because there was a state-level commission or board or group that got together and said that this project was feasible and told him that so that he could move forward with the application to us.
Mr. Vice Chair, I did speak with Mr. Busby when they walked Athens Road, and Mr. Busby was told that everything was all set, it was all taken care of. And I told him, no, it's not. And he said, well, when the board denies it, if the board denies it, let me rephrase that, my apologies, it's going to go back to the state, and then Mr. Busby's office will weigh back in to the other board, because there's too many inconsistencies on his permit going to the state. Follow me?
I do.
Okay.
And what I much appreciate is, I have no doubt that you're sincere, and I have no doubt that you've had these conversations and you were told these things. The challenge that we have as a board is that we're not privy to those discussions. And
Correct.
if there is teeth, and I'm not suggesting one way or another, but if there is teeth to some of those challenges, again, that would have to be separately litigated beyond our view.
So my question to the board is how can you vote on something when there's possible litigation down the
It's a
road?
great question. No,
I don't understand this,
Well,
and I
let me-
apologize.
There's no apology necessary. I think it's a great question. Let me give a stab at answering it, and then you can judge whether or not it's worth. But the reason is because we have a narrowed authority. The 40B further limits that authority based on the risk level of what happens if we take certain actions. But we have a narrow authority of what we're viewing. And so we're not viewing all of the potential litigation for all of these other topics. We're viewing what's in our purview based on our bylaw. Do we offer relief? Do we not offer relief? But that's specifically what's in our purview. So that's how we can take judgment on these individual waivers, just based on a narrow view. Now, you can look at that and suggest that we're sitting here with blinders, and we're not trying to.
Oh, no.
But we don't have the luxury of looking in and saying, in depth and in total, this particular topic, someone's going to throw this out later. So we need to lean one way or another way. We have to stay within those guardrails of what's in our purview. And I offer the board to jump in if I'm off track here, but that's how I see it. And I mean, again, I appreciate your scenario. I appreciate your land, and I appreciate the challenges that you're facing with. But from our perspective, those are all topics that would have to be separately litigated, and it's not something that narrows our decision, quite frankly, if that makes sense.
So can I just,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, that's okay. I just wanted to speak to the consultant directly and just say, hearing this conversation, can the board in any way suggest that these items be moved for clarification?
So you can always impose a condition if the board decides to approve the project. You can always include a condition of approval that prior to putting a shovel in the ground, the applicant has to demonstrate in writing to the building inspector, a legal opinion for review by town council that the applicant has adequate legal access to construct this project. So I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I'm saying that you can make it a condition of the permit if that's what you choose to do. Someone needs to be able to establish that there's adequate access to the project. And as for things like fire hydrants and so forth, the board needs to rely on whatever input you're getting from your fire department. Those are your public safety folks. You have to listen to them.
There are, Dr. Menard pointed out, I have 1, 2, 3, 4
Yep.
fire hydrants in this construction project. So-
Right. And is the fire chief opined on that? If the fire chief says this is adequate, then part of the conditions of approval are that the applicant shall provide the number of fire hydrants in the appropriate locations as required by the fire chief before you get a building permit. You have to show a plan that shows this information.
Mr. Chair?
But we do have every right to send this back to the state.
Mr.
mean,
Chair,
this
you
is- they're asking
are
for it.
correct. There are that many fire hydrants, but the main going down there is only 6 inch. So you cannot get that much water through a
Well,
6-inch
I think,
main.
again, that's fire department calculation. So if you
Correct.
wanted to question that, I would suggest, and again, you're more than welcome to bring that up here at the meeting. I don't disagree with your ability to do that, but I would think that would really be more of a question for the fire department. If the fire department has reviewed all this and they say a 6-inch main is adequate, then they've already opined that a 6-inch main is adequate.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, to
And
the
that they're
point,
gonna have the adequate pressure.
and refocusing on, to the point of conditioning this for adequate access and to essentially construct the project. If we were to add that condition or not, that's got to flush out. So if you were to challenge, or anyone was to challenge access to the project, whether we approved it or not, if we approved it and it went forward, if it's shown litigiously that they don't have access to this project, then it doesn't go forward, whether we condition that or not.
It's true.
So that needs to separately be litigated respectfully. And so what I'm offering is continue to bring your angst and your comments forward. But our narrow view is that the reason why we can weigh into these waivers is because that's how narrow we're looking at this, based on what our authority is.
Well, like the other gentleman spoke before me, you have the bylaws. You don't have to give the waivers.
What I would like to request from you
Yes, sir.
is because you have brought up, in my opinion, at least a half a dozen valid issues with this project. I don't disagree with any of them between the access to the road, I think you had also brought up at one point, there was a town lot that is questionable whether it'd be involved in the if you could literally,
I believe Dr. Menard, we spoke on that, Mr. Chair.
okay, well, what I was gonna propose anyway, if you could email a bullet list of those concerns, and if we can review them and they are valid, we can make sure those go in to the final conditions of the permit. That way they have to be reviewed before. So what, again, I think what we're trying to point out tonight is that we have to look at these things that are on the paper. We can make our decision based on the bylaw or based on what the project is. That's all well and good. But if we go to the end of this project timeline and we condition those things that you have concerns with, even though if this project does hypothetically get approved, let's just say, then those items that are conditioned would have to be demonstrated to be proven before they could move forward with the project. So if we said you have to prove that you have access to the road because it's a private way, if you have adequate fire hydrants, just hypothetically speaking, you know, whatever it might be, we can add those as conditions, and until those are met, like our consultant said, they can't break ground. So I would appreciate if you could actually add those in a list and provide it to them, and if those are adequate, we would definitely add those to the conditions.
Provided to the board?
Well, I
Mr.
would say,
Chair?
you know, you has to go through the Department of Inspectional Services first.
Okay.
Yeah. And because I know, believe me, you've come up with 3 or 4 different things, and I would hate to think that I would actually miss one, because
Okay.
you've done them over a couple different meetings.
Yes, sir.
I think that would be a wise choice to do as well, hopefully. So again, with the waiver to 64 apartments, do we want to sit on that one and see how the height changes?
Yeah, I mean, for Mr. Chairman, I don't, we could certainly do that, but I would suggest sitting on it, not for the fact that the height's going to change the number of units, but just the fact that this is another go, no-go.
Right.
Quite frankly.
Right.
Is it, you know, I mean, I don't think, putting a different cap on it, I don't think that it's going to change what they're asking for relief here with respect.
Okay.
But I would suggest that this is another stop and go.
All right, so this is for further review?
So I would suggest further review, and this could be looked at in review with allowing a multifamily dwelling height of 45 feet as
Right.
well, and so forth.
Yeah, I think they sort of, they're interconnected, realistically. Okay. So that's the first page.
Yeah, I mean, those are the showstoppers, quite frankly.
Right. And then we have stormwater management bylaws. So they're looking for,
Mr. Chairman, before you proceed,
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I apologize. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted, so I know it's not going to get to the number of 12, but I think it's been brought up a couple of times. I don't know if there's feasibility to split the buildings, or one of those buildings sits well within the wetland buffer, and that's another waiver that's coming up. So if there was an appetite or potential that they shift the building or split it into 2 and get it further out of that wetland buffer, maybe it's more feasible on the long term for these waivers. They're still going to be needed, but again, I think it shows that they're willing to work within the purview of it. But 64 units wanting to be, I think it's actually built within the 50-foot, or maybe even, pretty close to 25-foot buffer zone. But if they were to reduce the size of the building, shift them, they might get out of there, and then also reduce that number from 64 to 32 potentially, or something like that. I don't know if there's an appetite or something the developer may look at, or the board could ask to see what that feasibility is, especially when they get to the wetland protection regulations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can make that a condition also. We can condition.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Regarding what Mr. Chambers said, sorry, Danny Largis, 39 Perry Place. The first 3-story building, if you look at this map, the driveway to that is 20 feet. He has to fill in the wetland. And you're looking at it, and it looks like a retaining wall to fill in the wetland to put the building that close. I don't know how anybody else can't fill in a wetland, but you scream 40B. I mean, Oh, my lord, Sujan out in Spencer filled in his own swamp and he got in a heap of crap with the DEP. You know, Mr. Bolivar at number 4 Perry Place, when he was alive, the town went down and spoke to him about dumping his grass within, just grass clippings now, within so many feet of the wetland, and they told him he had to pull it all out, or they were gonna fine him. But here we got another one, just filling the wetland in, putting a retaining wall in, and dropping a building there. So I didn't know if you would, correct me please if I'm wrong, but didn't you ask for conservation's input on this at the last meeting? Did that ever happen?
We do have a conservation response, I believe. Is that correct? We do. I just want to make sure, for the record, we do.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We do.
Okay. Yep, right here.
Mr. Chairman, could I just say something real quick? Just in response to Mr. Largess's comment, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, but I believe they would still be subject to the State Wetlands Protection Act. What they're asking for is relief from our bylaw, which is more stringent than the State Wetlands Act.
Correct.
So they would still have some sort of requirement to protect the wetlands.
Yes.
Ours are better.
Correct. Ours are more stringent, correct. And usually what these waivers are is because most of the town's bylaws, generally speaking, and I'm not talking about just Orange specifically, but I say most towns' bylaws tend to be slightly more strict than the state's. So the reason why they do ask for these waivers, again, I'm not justifying what I'm explaining, is because the state standards make it a little bit easier for everybody involved, and they just, that's the acceptable standard at the state level.
Ours are certainly more conservative,
Correct.
which are better.
Correct. All right, so, again, to the consultant, stormwater management issues here. I think that we've had this discussion on the 25-foot disturbance of the vegetated wetland. I think if that is possible with the redesign of the roof line, would that be feasible?
So I think this one was just to keep I think that we have to ask, and actually more through the chair, for the consultant too. So the waiver for the stormwater management is to, I believe that we ask that all of that goes through the zoning board, correct?
It's a procedural waiver, yes?
I believe so, yes.
It's not a waiver of standards, it's a procedural waiver.
Right. So, again, I think that's what and the purview of those things is pretty much what we've been doing all along. So what they're asking for is to have the stormwater management reviewed at this level too, which is honestly, to me, fine, because if we've done it with each other group individually, we're going to ask them for their respective comments regarding.
And you can always include a condition of approval.
Right.
That requires a professional department, one of your professional staff to review for consistency with the stormwater bylaw. This is a procedural waiver, it's not a substantive one.
I would suggest, Mr. Chairman, we want more than that, though. We don't have the expertise to oversee this. We don't. And I know that we ask for their advice, but I'm opposed to waiving their authority into these topics. I really am.
So again, I think, and I understand your point of view on that, but I think with the rest of the consolidation of the 40B process to the zoning board, I think this is really a procedural issue, and I think we're gonna ask for their full comments, and they're gonna give us a written response. Very likely, they're gonna scrutinize carefully all of the plans and all the comments about it. So all we're really gonna do is, I think, take that information and then implement it for them.
Mr. Chair, you also can include, if you choose, in your conditions that the applicant will provide a sum of money, whatever, for the board to have outside consultants review some of this information, if you think that's necessary. So that you're not really in the position of having to evaluate something that perhaps you don't feel confident to evaluate, but rather you would have someone with the expertise to do so, making that review on the board's behalf and providing recommendations to you in the building department.
So can you speak to that? And I know you have to be careful on that kind of stuff, but would it be was this like a peer review type of thing?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, and many towns do this.
okay.
Just
sir.
through, sorry.
That's okay.
This was actually already peer-reviewed through Graves Engineering. That was part of what we've already done. So
Okay.
Graves Engineering did do this. We did make changes to it. We've then got, obviously, a clean bill of health from them, that everything passed. I believe that the last time with the board, I think the concern was, obviously the board doesn't want to be the one inspecting and making sure that we're building it to the standards that Graves, your peer review has.
Sure.
Which, I'm sure they could have a condition that we would work with, the engineers or whatever board they're working with to making sure that it was constructed properly. I think that was more of the concern last time, because like I said, Graves did review all this, and we do have a clean bill of health from them.
So now the question is making sure that the final plan submitted to the building department conform with what the engineers recommended. And that the engineers be available to provide whatever periodic inspections need to be made on the board's behalf. I mean, it sounds like it's easy.
Yeah, it is.
But the board
I
needs-
believe it is. I believe, like you said, I think this is just a procedural thing,
So
so.
with point of clarification on that now, I see what, this has already been waived and reviewed. They're really just, they want to put it in with the rest of our process, it sounds like. So to me, I take great faith in Graves Engineering. We've used them uncountable amount of times, and they've always been in the town's best interest. So, just, I think for the sake of consolidation, that would be wise to bring it in front of this board now with that new information. So, do I have so again, this is, I think we can take them separately, but they really do apply to all of the same thing here. So Section 7A, responsibility, waiver to allow the zoning board of appeals to have the authority to administer, implement, and enforce this bylaw as a project be permitted under Mass General Law 40B 760 CMR 56.00. Do I have a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Vice Chair Maron? Mr. Cussy? Mr. Garabedian?
Approve.
And I vote to approve. Section 1.5, Administration. The AEA shall administer, implement, and enforce these regulations. Any powers granted or the duties imposed by the AEA may delegate it in writing by the AEA to its employees or other departments or agencies of the town of Auburn, also known as the designee. The waiver to allow the zoning board of appeals to have the authority to administer the stormwater management bylaw as the project will be permitted under Mass General Law 40B 760 CMI 5600. Do I have a motion to approve 1.5?
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Do I have a second? So Vice Chair Maron? Mr. Cussy? Mr. Garabedian?
Approve.
And I approve. Section 2.06.3B, performance standards. No construction within 25 feet of the limit of the bank of vegetated wetland, the 25-foot zone may be permitted. Construction is here defined to include all docks, roadways, driveways, buildings, decks, clearings, grading, stormwater detention basins, and point source discharges. Any construction within the buffer zone must be designed and preserve a minimum of 25 feet of undisturbed natural vegetation and soils adjacent to vegetated wetland bank. A waiver to allow disturbance within 25 feet of vegetated wetland associated with the site development. Do I have a motion to approve that?
Mr. Chairman, before we move forward, I want to call attention to guidance that we got from the Conservation Commission. This is the 50-foot vegetated wetlands topic, right?
Correct.
Okay, so this has been amended within 25 feet?
Correct.
Are we suggesting that would satisfy them because they're requesting a denial here?
Correct.
I think it would need to go back to conservation, though, anyway, to evaluate the new plan, if I'm correct. Yeah.
We did,
So if we choose to not accept this waiver, then this action, when the time comes, would be reviewed by conservation.
And if we
Do you
do,
agree with that?
if we do waive it, conservation still has to review it. It's just they'd be only viewing it under the state bylaw and not both the Auburn Wetlands Act and the state act, really.
Right.
Yeah.
Say that one more time, please.
So if we approve the waiver, it still goes to conservation, but conservation is only looking at whether it complies with the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act. If we deny the waiver, it'll still go to conservation, but they'll have to meet both the Auburn Wetlands Act, or bylaw, and the state act, which presumably, if you're meeting the Auburn Act, you'll meet the state act because it's a higher standard.
Thank you for unwinding that. Did you read that in here, or did you just make that up?
I made it up knowing what I know about the Wetlands Protection Act.
It's so good to have these smart guys in school.
I did a project on it last year, so it helped.
Thank you very much. That was great. I enjoy being taken to school. That's good.
Learn something new every day, right?
Yeah,
That's a great thing.
that's a good one.
And we have a valuable resource to do that, too.
I interrupted you, Mr. Chairman, but
Not at all.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to deny.
All right. We have a motion to deny. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so Vice Chair Maron,
Deny.
Mr. Cussy, Mr. Garabedian.
I'd approve.
Could,
I'm going to approve. I know it sounds strange, but we're split 2-2, so.
You are.
And so that means we just review it at the next meeting with the full board anyway,
Right.
so, yeah.
So we'll leave that for review for the next meeting.
Why is that? Why isn't on no?
We don't have a tiebreaker because we don't have an odd number.
Wouldn't an even vote default to a no?
It would, okay.
Respectfully?
I've honestly just never had a split vote before. So,
If the
can we
motion-
verify that before? But I think the split vote, we're saying defaults to no?
If the motion was to approve it, and you didn't get a majority vote,
Then it's
you didn't get an approval.
Right, okay.
The motion was to deny.
Then you don't have, you're in limbo.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, and we didn't approve the motion to
Did not
deny.
pass.
I don't think we're in limbo. I think that a split vote here goes to the denial.
That's got to be 3-1, right? So
But the denial didn't pass either, with a majority vote.
Right.
Yep, it's because of the way we moved, where we didn't move to approve, we moved to deny.
It's always a good idea to move in the positive and then have a denied vote, just for the record.
You can, speak.
just before you go again, because I'm sure they're going to go again, because that was, I
Yeah,
got the
no, let's go ahead.
confusion. But just for the consultant, we're under the standard that's kind of a procedural thing, don't we? Because that was what would normally happen, obviously, anyway, because if once with the 40B, we'd be going to the state regulations. So how does that work?
Well, it's not, never automatic. You
Well,
always
I
still
guess
have
I
to-
shouldn't
That's why
say
you've
that.
got a waiver request here, is that you're asking the board to waive an aspect of the local bylaw, so that then when you go to the Conservation Commission, they're acting under the state act.
So
That-
could sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
If the board grants the waiver, then, the waiver's granted. But my point is just, once you go to the Conservation Commission, you have to comply with the state act anyway, you know that. And if there's anything in the local regulations that hasn't been waived, you have to comply with those as well.
So now, if we go to if they do deny this, if we went to the conservation, would they be able to allow us to go within the area, or is it an
They'll be
automatic
acting under
because-
the state act. I'm sorry? They'll be acting under the State Wetlands Act and any provision of the local wetlands bylaw that wasn't waived by this board.
So, you know what?
Okay.
Can I change my vote?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to vacate our previous vote.
Do I have okay, so we have a motion to vacate the previous vote. Do I have a second on that? Second. All right, so let's do a vote. Vice Chair Maron, vote to vacate?
I approve.
Mr. Cussy? Approve. Mr. Garabedian?
Approve.
And I approve. Vote is vacated from previously. Let's continue my discussion to get this vetted properly, in my opinion. Okay, so, we'll read it again, just to make sure. This is section 2.063B, performance standards. No construction within 25 feet of the limit of the bank of vegetated wetland, the 25-foot zone, may be permitted. Construction is here defined to include all docks, roadways, driveways, buildings, decks, clearings, grading, stormwater detention basins, point source discharges. Any construction within the buffer zone must be designated, preserve a minimum of 25 feet, undisturbed natural vegetation and soils adjacent to the vegetated wetland or bank. The request here is a waiver to allow disturbance within the 25 feet of vegetated wetland associated with the development.
So what the applicant asked is, if I went to the Conservation Commission, could they do this anyway? And that would depend on whether your local wetlands bylaw gives the Conservation Commission authority to waive these standards. And I'm not an expert on your local wetlands bylaw, but that would be the answer.
So
Do
if
they have
the-
the authority under the local wetlands bylaw to grant this kind of waiver on their own?
So you're saying, just so I understand it correctly, so if they do deny this, and then we go to conservation, and conservation does approve it, it wouldn't have an effect? They wouldn't have to, they could still,
So that's a question for your attorney, sir. I'm just simply saying that if the board denies the waiver, it's then up to the Conservation Commission to act under both their local wetlands bylaw and the state act. There's no automatic waiver from local regulations. The burden is on you to ask for the waivers that you need,
Okay, so we can still ask for the waiver from the conservation, I
if
guess.
they have the authority to grant it, and I'm not an expert in your local wetlands bylaw.
Okay.
It looks like Mr. Fallon might have some knowledge on
Sounds
that.
on
I
there.
have a little bit of knowledge on the regulations because I helped promulgate them back in 2012.
Thank you.
Okay, so if the applicant goes to the, or when the applicant goes to the Conservation Commission, they can request a waiver, and the waiver on page 2 is spelled out clearly. No waiver shall be granted unless the Conservation Commission determines that, A, there are no practical alternatives to proposed action, B, alteration of the resource area has been minimized to the greatest extent practical, and C, compensatory or mitigating measures are taken even in an off-site location to protect the public interest and the protected resource area to be removed, filled, dredged, built upon, or altered. The burden of proof shall be on the applicant to demonstrate that the proposed project meets the standards defined in this section. And based on this plan here, you can see that there is some replication that's proposed, and generally it's 1.5 times the amount that they're taking, which is allowed under the local and state bylaw, laws. So that's the quick answer.
Yep.
With that, I mean,
Thank you very much
So
for
in
that.
response to the applicant, the Conservation Commission would in fact have the authority to receive and
Gotcha. Yeah, that's-
judge a waiver.
okay, that's how I heard it too. Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Comfortable with it. Ooh.
If I may, I brought up earlier, again, if they were to reposition the buildings or do something different, then they wouldn't necessarily need this waiver. And this is an opportunity, I think, for the board to be able to negotiate, if he's looking for that waiver, that you guys could maybe position or ask him to relocate maybe to the 50 or 35 or whatever is determined, but get closer to that, because it looks like he's looking for these waivers regardless of the decision today. But if you can influence the project in a way where it removes it, that might be an opportunity, again, to negotiate with the developer if he's willing to do that. And you can also potentially address the other 9.3.6.4, potentially, so.
Could actually speak to that. So we did look at that, obviously, because this was a question at the last meeting as well. We can achieve it. We're going to be pushing more towards, it's really just the building all the way in the back is the only one. The 25 feet that we're looking to disturb, we're looking to just do grading. We're not looking to have any building or anything in there. It's just a grading thing. And if we don't get it, we would just slide the building closer towards large S in that direction, and we'd be able to achieve it then. It's just, we're trying to push it as far as we can away from the abutter, but if we have to, we can just slide the building over. It's not a big deal.
I'm just going to say, so, Mr. Lodges, did you hear what he just, if you want to approach the microphone, if you could please, sir, but I just want to point this out because I think this is important. that The
Mr.
position
Chair,
of this is a balance between a slight wetland disturbance that could be mitigated and, you know, it gets improved, it doesn't just stay a wetland disturbance, or you're going to push it closer to your property line in your
Well,
house.
Mr. Chair, the wetland isn't just there, it's all along Perry Place. So if you give him the buffer to go within 25 feet, now he can fill in the sides of the road, okay? He can turn around and put the retaining wall in, and I'm not talking a little bit in the wetland. This retaining wall's probably 35 to 40 feet in the swamp. I'm not talking, I'm talking a drastic amount. So if
Understood.
you give him the waiver for this, then he can just fill in the swamp and do whatever he wants.
Again, but what so he can't do it, he can't just fill in a swamp and do whatever he wants. That's not
right.
accurate under the Wetlands Protection Acts that we have here now. But also consider, again, you're saying that, you're telling me is the wetlands are more important to have this building closer to your property.
I'm not looking at any wetlands down on that building. Which, so why, no, please, point it out.
So it's really,
So,
the spot that we're looking to do grading is within the.
well, I think you might want to clarify that with the board as well.
Sure, please.
Because he's not talking down here, he's talking,
Yeah, no, please, go ahead.
So this is, so right here, this is the 25-foot buffer.
Yep.
We're gonna do grading all within here to get this corner and do this, right? So all I really have to do is if I take this and I slide the building over and closer to him, then I can achieve that.
Okay.
What he's talking about is, we do have a wall right here, and there's a wetland replication area that we're refilling and putting over here. This would all be covered within the limit of work for the roadway.
Right.
And access. So I'm gonna be going to conservation for this. This, I'm not worried about this. This, like he said, it's,
Yep.
you know, we're opening it up. It's for access. It's for the fire department. It's for access. This, we're giving a replication area of 1.5%. We're out of, you know, the 50 foot. So here's the 25-foot
Yep,
here.
right.
I can achieve my grading through here.
Yep.
If I need to. The only one that I'm
issue
really
out
gonna
there.
not be able to achieve is this one. So I'll probably have to slide this building.
Well, okay, then, yeah,
10
then,
feet or something.
okay.
I can do it. It's just.
Then I would slide the building.
I think it's a better, but it's, if you guys don't, you know, want the 25 feet, then I just,
Understood, okay.
for his sake, I would want it, but it's
Right.
totally up to him.
Well, but as we pointed out, the commission may decide to grant a waiver anyway.
They could, correct.
Right.
Right. And they could say, they could probably say no to me even if I had it for you guys, right? But they could still,
Under the
they
state
still
act.
have to go to conservation.
No, you're going to have,
I thought this was like
Right.
procedural.
I understand what you're saying. Okay. So again, I mean, I think this is one of those balancing acts that you have where, do we care about a 25? We do obviously care about a 25-foot buffer zone in a wetland, but are we going to impact long-term the effect of the neighborhood should this project go through? Because we're going to push it 15, 20 feet closer to their property.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the practical nature of the question, but the reason why these were set up was to protect the wetland. Whether it's, you know, and I look at this as permeable versus impermeable surface. And at the risk of sounding too environmentally, because I'm not that guy, but honestly, I mean, you know, an inch is too much. I mean, you start encroaching and taking it away. And I understand the practical nature of this. I do. But I find myself, you know, being forced, not by anyone here conservatively, but forcing, you know, a practical vote versus voting my conscience on some of these things. And if I go back to why I'm even sitting here, I took, you know, I made a commitment to my family and myself that I would be voting my conscience up here, right or wrong. And so I err on protect the wetlands, see where it falls.
I agree.
Well, Mr. Chair, growing up there on that property, there is no wetland there. Where he's pointing out, I thought he was pointing out towards the road. There's no water down there. There's no, where he just pointed out for the 25 feet, and I would, if you approve it, I would put in the stipulation that it's the northeast corner of that building and that building only, nothing else.
Can I interrupt just for a second? I apologize, because you're making the point that I was not well articulating earlier, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but, so for that point exactly, this is a Conservation Commission decision, because they have that expertise of whether or not this is an issue or not. Is there water there or not?
There is no water in that area.
I understand what you're saying,
None
sir.
whatsoever.
But what I need to do is rely on the experts that guard against this and have them tell us whether or not this is a thing or not a thing. And that's why I want them, whether or not they decide to do a waiver, I don't have the expertise to basically say whether or not this is a thing. And so I want them to do it because that's what they do, respectfully.
And they're going to do it no matter what. It's just what law they're able to look at is what we're saying. Whether or not you have to go to the higher standard or you can only use the lower standard.
I love when you jump in, because I always learn something. No, but you're absolutely right. And so, and I apologize for interrupting you, but for my point earlier, I want the experts in the room to be calling the shots. And so if it's a non-thing, if there's no water down there, and it's a non-thing, let the Conservation Commission give him his waiver, respectfully. And if it is a thing, then let them hold it back. But I'm not comfortable with giving that waiver and relinquishing the expertise and us making that call. That's just my opinion, Mr. Chairman.
And honestly, I think you just surmised my opinion as well.
Through the chair.
Thank you.
So I believe the developer said he could just shift the building down. If he shifts that building down, then you get up against the property line again. I think
Exactly, that's
this,
the thing.
this is showing 20, and if they're moving it, and again, I don't have,
Well, that's why I wanted to bring Mr.
Actu-
Rogers back up and explain, if that's not a wetland and the building can remain there, it's beneficial to Mr. Rogers. If that is a wetland and they need it moved, let's hypothetically speaking, now it's 20 feet, 25.
property line now.
Okay,
So, and that's, so it would be about 10 to move it out of there, but again, I think it is, and again, you guys have your decisions to make. Conservation would have to make that decision, but if he's just going to shift it instead of shrink the size of the building, then that gets up against your zoning and making
Right,
sure.
because then we're in the
If he's
setback.
out of there by moving it 10 feet and he has 10.5 on the property line, that's within the rules there, but
as you can see, this project continues to get more and more complicated. This is like an onion. Every layer we open up has got more and more layers underneath it.
Just to,
Right.
just to add one more,
No, but
thing to your
again,
comment.
Say, just say
that-
no, but again, if we say no, they repeal it to the state, and then all the progress that we've made in negotiating with all this stuff goes away. So again, if we say no, this project doesn't stop. No, that's okay. I get it.
Just to clarify, just a couple things before.
Sure.
So wetlands isn't always just water, right? So it might not be wet, but it would still be wetlands. When we go out there, we have to look at plants, we have to look at multiple aspects of it to clarify whether it is wetlands or not. So what you see, believe me, there's times that it's very frustrating for a developer that it does not look wet, but it is wet with plantings, and it does not work in my favor. We did have the wetland line staked, flagged a while ago, and they did come out and take a look at it. So this is very accurate to what we believe, what the conservation believes. And again, we're going to be going back. So it may not look wet, but we do have to get outside of that buffer. And then to answer your question, I think that, you should correct me if I'm wrong, but even if you gave us this, doesn't mean that the conservation has to give it to us. It would then go to them, and we would go through the process with them. I think all this waiver is going to allow us to do is that if the conservation does feel like we can go within that area, I'm assuming that we can go within that area. Again, you're not approving the conservation, you're not approving my work, you're just allowing them to go within that area if they want to, right? Which is honestly more of a benefit to them than it is to me. I could just slide the building. So it's not a huge deal, but really be up to the board. And
We're also
up to
really saying
conservation.
what lot is being applied, really.
Right.
That's
But
the
if we
big question.
approve it, we're negating our town bylaw.
Right, well, that's what Mr.
Well, you're
Gabby
approving it, but the
pointed out.
conservation,
We'd just be going to the state.
I'm just going to go to conservation, and they're
Right, so
going
if we grant this waiver, they go by state standards. If we do not grant this waiver, it goes through our town standards and the state standards. But again, it would be our town standards because they're higher than the state.
But conservation is the one that will ultimately be approving this, not you guys, not by this waiver. We'll be going to conservation for this.
Yeah, we're not actually saying if it's okay to build in the wetlands.
Right. You're just allowing the relief from the bylaw if needed, or if approved by conservation.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I may, and we've come quite through the circle on this one, the previous vote was vacated. And so, to move it forward,
I have to ask for another motion.
if there is another motion, sir.
Okay, so going to the section 2.06.3.b, waiver to allow disturbance within 25 feet of a vegetated wetland associated with the site development. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Go ahead, what is it?
I move to waive section 2.06.6.3.b of the Wetlands Performance Standards to allow disturbance within 25 feet of vegetated wetland associated with site development.
Do I have a second?
I believe the chair can second. To accomplish what we're going for, you would have to
Right,
second.
I know, I understand, but I'm just making sure that nobody else has ones.
Fair enough.
All right, so I'll second that. So we have a motion to allow this waiver, and then I second it. So we're going to go through and do a vote again. Mr. Maron?
Deny.
Mr. Cussy? We're right back to square one again. So,
Mr. Chairman, I move to table the vote to the next meeting.
all right, so I have a motion to move the table to vote to the next meeting.
Before I agree with the motion, Mr. Chairman, I thought that the reversal of that was to
Yeah.
accomplish a denial.
Right, that's what I thought, too.
Yeah, I
So I
forgot.
thought we were, so if we couldn't get
That's right. No, you
If the
you
motion
definitely have
to
it right.
approve fails because you don't have a majority, the
It actually
motion
is a
is
denial this time.
denied.
Yeah.
Right, so then the motion is denied now officially, correct?
So we
okay.
are denied, and
We
there's
are
no
denied. I
reason.
apologize, correct.
No apology necessary. This is a wild room tonight.
It certainly, I can tell you something, I learn something procedurally every time I come to these meetings. So that's something new I have to figure out, if it's a motion to deny, motion to approve, if it's split by two, if it's not, I have to keep all that in my head now.
I think you have a
All right,
question,
so-
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. So there's a lot that just happened there, and I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if the entire vote first went through. So I would just, I would like to just have it be clean and go through, because I think Mr. Garabedian offered another proposed vote. So if we can just clean it, because I'm just, I'm thinking in my head how the minutes are going to look.
my
I don't
apologies.
want to, I don't want to be unclear on this one.
Okay.
My apologies on that.
Thank
You want to go ahead one more time then? Just, we want to clarify what we did?
Yeah, so,
If I would just ask Mr. Garabedian to vacate his previous motion.
yeah, I withdraw the motion.
All right, so we have a motion to withdraw. Do I have a second? I'll make a second to withdraw that motion because I made a second on it.
I approve,
All
Mr.
right,
Chairman.
so then we have a motion to withdraw a second time. Vice Chair Maron?
Wait, point of order. I was withdrawing the motion to table.
Oh, withdrawing the motion to table.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
because the problem is you never said yes or no to the vote. That was really what Mr. Coyle was
All right,
saying.
so we withdraw motion to table. Do I have a second? I second that. Mr. Maron?
I approve.
Mr. Cussy? I approve. Motion to table has been vacated.
Right,
Now, let's go back to the original
motion,
motion.
which was to approve the
So it was
waiver.
a
Which was
motion to
approve the waiver.
Yes.
It was a vote of 2-2.
You never announced your vote, though.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, I apologize. I voted to approve, so it was
Okay.
a 2-2 again, which was a split,
So what we're going to do,
which makes it denied.
I believe what
should go around.
what the request was, is if we could just make the motion, Mr. Garabedian.
One more time?
Yeah, I moved to approve
Again.
the waiver.
Okay, so he made the motion to approve. I second. Vice Chair Maron?
Deny.
Mr. Cussy? Mr. Garabedian?
Approve.
And I vote to approve. So because it's a 2-2, the motion is denied.
Right.
Okay. So,
If for nothing else, one of the lessons this evening, Mr. Chairman, is to reach out to other board members and never give them the day off.
correct. That is definitely a good idea.
Can I? So,
Okay, so that last waiver has been denied.
yep.
All right.
Just one more thing that I was thinking about when we were through this. So on the height requirement, I hate to bring this up again because it's getting late, but with the height requirement, the only thing is when you're talking about the roof isn't considered in the height. It goes to the top of, so no matter what I did, even if I took that to a flat roof, it's still 45. Do you know what I'm saying? So like when we were
But I
talking
think
about
the concern
lowering
was the
roof heights
63, it ends
and
up
doing
being-
different things, the way, and it is an odd situation with the way that the bylaw is written to the top, to the ceiling, of the top floor. So really, no matter what I do, if I did a gambrel or any other type, flat roof, anything, it's still gonna be 45, no matter what.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
You may.
So you're absolutely right. And it wasn't in consideration to try to get that number under 10 feet for relief.
Yep.
It was a consideration of, I'll just be blunt, it was a consideration of the distaste for a 60-foot building.
Okay,
And so, one of the reasons why we struggle with it is because we understand the constraints of our bylaw.
Yeah.
And that you're only asking for 10 feet of relief.
Correct.
But the reality is that they're going to be looking at a 60-foot building.
Okay.
And because of that.
I just wanted to.
But you're articulately, you're absolutely correct.
Yeah,
Doesn't change anything.
I just wanted to clarify, because I don't want to come walking back in, next meeting with still my 45 and have you be like, did you even look at this?
Yeah,
So
we're-
just to be
No, we
clear
understand that point.
Yeah, all right. I just wanted to be
Down.
clear with that.
It is gonna bring the height down, but it's still whether or not it's.
Yeah, no matter what, the 45 will be
Yeah,
the
what it
40.
wouldn't do is, it wouldn't reduce the burden of us giving you 10 feet relief.
Right.
What it would do is take the stink out of the picture of a 60-foot building.
Gotcha. All right. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that. Again, I just didn't want it to come back in with the 45 and say.
You're absolutely
I
correct.
just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page.
No,
which
you're
sounds like we
absolutely
are.
correct.
Yep.
And I don't mean to be so potty mouth, but that
You're good.
that really was the topic, is it we don't expect you to come back here, work magic.
Okay.
And all of a sudden redesign this like a space saucer, but it's not that we would expect that you'd be able to come in on that 10 feet request.
Okay,
It's
all right,
that you
that's fair,
wouldn't
yeah.
create such a high building.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
Right.
I appreciate that.
35 feet would be nice.
66 feet, Mr. Vice Chair.
Right. A total of 66.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just
You may.
restate, like I've said a couple times, we do have to keep in mind, as a board, we have to stay within our bylaws. As much as we can say the 66 feet, it is 45 feet according to the bylaws.
Right, correct, understood. I appreciate that clarification, too. Okay, so I think we've covered much of the waivers for tonight that we can. Is everybody in agreement with that? You're looking at me like maybe not?
No, I'm just saying, I think the direction from the board is to try to bring the height of the building down.
Correct.
Yes.
So we can have an argument about whether it's 1 foot or 10 feet. I think the direction from the board is to bring the height of the building down.
Right.
So that's your burden.
Yes, yep.
Thank you for clarifying that, I
No
appreciate that.
problem.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, I will ask, earlier in the meeting, the consultant said that you can ask for money to go for an outside engineer to, I will ask that it has nothing to do with the builder himself. Because as of the last meeting, we learned how that traffic study went, and there was 5 more accidents right at that intersection in one day at Auburn Street, Vine
I
Street.
do know, can I just, and again, I know this is getting off topic, but I know that recently, there was a pretty serious accident there as well.
There was,
Was
I
one
didn't
that
want to
somebody
bring,
came
but
off
there
the
was,
highway?
there was
didn't use-
5
didn't use
in
their
one
brakes?
day.
And I think there was a 5-car pile up there, or something like that?
There was.
Yeah, it was a pretty good
There
one.
was, and there was another one at Rockland Road and Auburn Street too, Mr. Chair. So I really don't think that traffic study holds pond water.
Well, I don't really know if we're not into traffic study, really. We have to kind of concentrate on the waivers, but I do understand that.
I was just saying, an outside consultant who has nothing to do with the builder.
Again, I don't think we can purview that this evening, because we've kind of covered traffic already. You know, I mean, we
No,
talked
no,
about that,
I was
think it was
talking
2 meetings ago.
I was talking an outside consultant on the other issues that the
Right.
consultant said you could ask for.
But we have to wait until they bring these back,
Yes,
and then we can discuss a possibility of a review by a consultant.
yes, sir, Mr. Chair.
Am I saying that correctly again, ma'am?
Yes, but also keeping an eye on the deadline to close the public hearing, which is
Right.
when? Somebody has
Well, it's April,
calculated that.
do we say
Well,
17th?
the applicant has agreed April 17th is our next meeting.
But Graves already
So you're going to get that in writing, and you're going to file that with the town clerk, yes?
Correct.
Right.
So you hear that? It's got to be in writing and filed with the town clerk, too. Yes, sir.
Through the, Chair, so any consulting fees would be received so the town can hire the consultant. So it has nothing to do with the developer himself. So anything that you guys are requesting, it would be for the board to hire. That's why you're requesting the fees, so you can hire the right. So it's no one that the developer is going to propose.
Is there a list of approved? What he's,
No, I mean, typically, what a board would do, for whatever it's worth, is require as a condition of approval, if you're approving the project, some amount of money for the board to have the project periodically inspected, the final plan. So bear in mind what happens later if this project is approved and it goes forward. Eventually, the applicant has to come to the building department with what's called the final plans. And that is the plan set that's going to show how all the board's conditions have been incorporated into the approved plans, which is what comes out of the comprehensive permit. And someone needs to review those final plans to determine that, in fact, all the conditions of approval have been addressed, including any conditions that the peer review consultants may have suggested. So then there's the question of, does the board need assistance with, during construction for inspections? So I'm just saying that typically there is an amount of money that a board just puts in their decision, applicant's responsible for this, and then it's the board's decision to hire whatever consultant they need to assist in that review.
So through the chair, the town has hired for the 2 schools structural engineers to review the structure. So that has been done in the past.
Yeah, these things are done, it's pretty common.
I just wanted to clarify for the residents' concern
Sure.
that the board has the authority to go out and hire those consultants.
Yes, at the applicant's expense.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
okay. Have I left anything behind on the table this evening that we are required to still continue with. I think we're okay. I think we've brought most of these things to the attention. Okay. So our next meeting, do I have anything else? I think we're pretty covered for these. I just want to make sure. Okay. So, I'm going to make a motion that we continue this hearing until April 17th, which is our next scheduled zoning board meeting. This hearing will remain open as it has from the beginning for any continued comments or any other issues. The applicant is going to be required to sign that, and it's going to be registered with the town clerk at some point. You'll adopt that procedure for us, please. And I believe this hearing should be completed for tonight, and that we will see you again on April 17th.
Vote to continue the hearing.
And yes, this hearing is continued. Do I have a motion to continue the hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to continue the hearing. Just for consideration, before we move on, though, are there any other departments, commissions in town that we've either reached out to and hadn't gotten a response yet for advice? I know we heard from the Conservation Commission. Are we waiting for anyone else to weigh in, condition-wise?
No, I believe that the Conservation Commission was our last one that we had to have a return from.
Okay, so we've...
Yeah, we've heard from everyone.
Okay, very good. Well, all right, then my...
Water Department included, because they are technically a quasi-government organization with
Right.
us. So, yeah, so do I have a motion to continue the hearing?
My motion to continue stands.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, before voting, I just want to, for full clarity, we're not going to have the April 3rd meeting we talked about last meeting?
Correct. This is going to, because the applicant has agreed to go to April 17th, so we're not going to have an April 3rd meeting.
Yep, I just wanted for full clarity for all the residents, so.
Perfect, thank you. So, your vote? I just want to make sure.
I approve.
Your vote? Your vote?
Approve.
And I approve. Okay. Hearing remains open. We have concluded this discussion for this evening, and we're going to move on.
Good evening.
So we have decisions for Sinorama located at 151 Southbridge Street, Arbor Recycling. All of us have already signed those. The minutes for 2024 are going to be delayed because there was a typo in those they had to correct, so we're not going to be doing the meetings. The discussion for the April 3rd or April 20th meeting has been resolved. We're going to do the standard. And then we've also been notified, I know this is not going to make you happy, Mr. Maron, but ZPT Energy Solutions LLC, notification that they have extended their permit under the lead. So they've been able to remove the responsibility of extending their permit to us, and they have passed some type of law that allows them to continue.
I did see that, Mr. Chairman, and I did take a moment in my office to reflect. I will soon to be over it, but I'm hopeful with whomever allowed them to do that without our authority, take some time before Easter to go to confession.
All righty. So do I have anything else this evening? I think we're good. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. And thank you all for coming again this evening and bearing through this process.